The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Can you do a pun on that?
That's pretty good.
The Twitter apocalypse? I don't know, apocalypse. They're back on, aren't they? Tate and Kanye and all of that. And what does it mean now? What is morality anymore? Who gets sanctioned? Who imposes sanctions? Former guest on the show, and I would say friend of the show, because I'm certainly a friend of me personally, Jordan Peterson. He's back on Twitter. He's baiting them by using the famous Shining image of Jack Nicholson there.
Effective, isn't it?
Yeah, because of the whites of the eyes and the teeth. That's menace. And also that he's glancing to the side. That's a lot of whites. That's a lot of whites.
Do you think he does his own tweets, Jordan?
Yeah, I do. JP does his own tweets. No question. No question. And what's the first tweet back from, say, Andrew Tate? I mean, we've not had Andrew Tate on, have we? A lot of people say misogynist, sexist. Some people say just the sexier JP. He says, mastery is a funny thing. It's almost as if on a long enough timescale, losing simply isn't an option. Such is the way of Wu-Dan. Now, I will say I don't know what Wu-Dan is. That's probably something that he talks about in his content, I suppose,
Right.
is it?
It's not just misspelt Wuhan.
Is it Wuhan? Such is the way of Wuhan.
Right.
You're fine in the lab, stay away from the wet market. That lab, they're for literally clinical conditions, very safe in there, you don't need to worry. But that wet market, careful, you'll do a pandemic. Ye came back with a much more sort of direct. I reckon Ye does his own tweets, because his first tweet back, testing, seeing if my Twitter is unblocked. I like that, because is that meta, or is that just how he did that?
Yeah.
Because look, Ye is a great case study for the nature of genius, because he's a great creator and he's brilliant, and there's been so many times when he's sailed close to the wind. You can see that there's been times where they've gone, we don't like Kanye, shut him down. But then, of course, he's recently, I think they've stepped it up a little bit. There's been cancellation of his deals and all stuff, and that was, and kicked off.
Took a while though, didn't it?
They had to grind him.
Adidas took their time.
Not sure. I don't know.
Can make quite a lot from him.
Oh, is it? Just got to do those calculations, like Rogan. They wanted to cancel Rogan during all that COVID stuff, but someone's doing the maths over at Spotify. Oh, okay, it's the Taylor Swift album a day. We can't cancel him. Shit. So Twitter have allowed back those 4 particular people, but who? And I suppose there's a lot of outrage. Again, you can sort of, isn't it now? Are we at a time where your opinion is determined by a set of pre-agreed alliances and principles, is it? If you're a centre-left liberal person and it's no, it's outrageous, they should be banned. That's why it's interesting to watch Chappelle on SNL, because he's Gelignite, and he's sort of saying, introducing the subject of Kanye or Trump, but then being sort of genuinely surprising on those subjects, sort of inviting you to challenge your own prejudices and your preconditions for laughing. You can hear that kind of nervousness. And of course, what's said about Twitter is, well, look, if we are banning Trump and Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate and Kanye, if you have to be sort of I'm down for free speech, or you have to say, right, what are the conditions? Is it inciting violence? In which case you have to agree that Trump was integrally involved in what some call the insurrection and other call protests of January the 6th. To say that Tate is a misogynist, I guess you have to agree with certain aspects of that. And then sort of Kanye, I guess it's the anti-Semitism. And with JP, it was the stuff about Elliot Page, who, when we had our conversation, I challenged him on that basis, not from a free speech angle, but just from a simple compassion one. And you can go and check that when you've checked this, and let me know in the chat and the comments what you think about free speech in general. Free speech surely means the freedom of speech for people that you disagree with to express their opinions freely. Here are some other people. Gareth, will you read this to us? This is about other people.
This is about FIFA, actually.
Well, haven't we got something about
story.
other people that are banned from Twitter? Well, the sheiks and sheiks and people that were good old 2010 style terrorists.
The comment has been made, and it has been made a lot by, say, right-wing commentators around the time when Trump was being banned, of leaders of repressive regimes who weren't necessarily banned. That you had, Iranian leaders or other examples, Venezuelan leaders who were committing atrocities in their own countries, and yet they were still allowed on Twitter. And I suppose the comment was, what's the rule then? Where's the cut-off point?
What is the rule? Because if the rule is ban dictators, then you've got to ban all dictators. If it's advocates of violence, then you have to ban all advocates of violence. It has to be uniform. Otherwise, people will identify other patterns and say, oh, it's because of your personal political preferences.
I guess also, we had Alan McLeod on talking about how the infiltration of groups like the CIA into Twitter And when you look at, I mean, then it's like, how far down do you go? Do you look at the CIA and say, well, what have the CIA been guilty of? What kind of things in relation to terrorist groups and things that the CIA have played their part in? And now where are we? So what we're just saying is, on the surface, we ban these people because of what they represent to us, because of how politically useful these people, rightly or wrongly. But then it's like, how far do you go with this?
I suppose what you have to identify is what your own prejudices and biases are. Like, so if you like, guess what? There's this weird coincidence. I really hate Donald Trump, and I also think Donald Trump should be banned from Twitter. I hate Jordan Peterson, and I also think, like, I suppose where things become interesting is when you say, I completely disagree with the politics of Donald Trump and the philosophy of Jordan Peterson, but I believe in free speech, and therefore, like, it's. Once those two things, if you can uncouple those ideas, then I think there's a chance for reasonable debate. But there is no debate. There are sort of two frozen blocks of dogma clashing against one another, and I can't help but think that that is convenient for centralised power and a distraction. Now take this World Cup in Qatar. Like, similarly, who's in a position, whether it's the CIA infiltration of social media, like if you accept that there has been CIA and FBI infiltration into Facebook and Twitter and all of the social media giants, has been widely reported, and not into irrelevant positions. They are controlling the editorial policy. They are controlling who gets censored. So ultimately, big tech and the state have a shared agenda. That's ultimately what's being, and certainly are able, or certainly have convergent interest to the degree where they can control a narrative and assure that their agenda is met.
Trump, I mean, it's a very difficult case, but it's very hard to argue that he's in a general, like, constant way inciting violence. You could maybe argue that he maybe did that on January 5th and January 6th, but I think that's a difficult argument to hold up forever. And then you have to apply it to everybody. That's the big problem with all this, is how do you remove one person but not 5,000 other people who've committed the same kinds of offenses? People are always going to see bias in those decisions.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, certainly. Do you think that it is the era of Trump over? Like, in his announcement at Mar-a-Lago, he said that he would dismantle the deep state. He still seems to incentivize let's call it the sort of neoliberal left in the same way he always did. Do you think that we're seeing the decline of the sort of Trump era, even if it is the Trump narrative rather than him as a sort of a political figure?
So I made the mistake once in October of 2016 of saying Donald Trump was finished. This was after the Access Hollywood thing. I put that in print in Rolling Stone, and I'm not going to make that mistake ever again. The guy is never finished. He's like Jason in the Friday the 13th movies. Like, he's never actually dead. You should never turn your back on Donald Trump. And, you know, what he feeds off is the way that sort of mainstream media and politicians treat him. There's a narrative that he creates that he's being treated unfairly, and in many cases he's right. And the more they do that, the more they try to clamp down and use force to prevent him from speaking or whatever it is, he draws energy from that. So I never count him out. I always think that his best friends are his enemies, actually, because they give him all this momentum through the media by trying to cut off your ability to hear what he has to say.
So if you were trying to handle Trump strategically, you would say, let Trump be on Twitter, let Trump access media like any other political orator or ideologue, and focus the argument, if you are an opponent of Trump, on how you are going to address the issues that Trump successfully has brought to the forefront. The belief that there are deep state operatives that control the political space beyond the reach of ordinary democratic process, that you will limit and control corporate power and finance and create a fairer world for ordinary Americans of all colours and persuasions. Would that be a way of doing it? And is that impossible for Trump's opponents because of their entrenched relationships?
Well, I think that's the key. I think Trump understood this on some level in 2016, which is that, yeah, the way that you defeat Donald Trump, if you're thinking strategically, is to kind of ignore him as much as you can, and then offer your own positive, believable, honest way forward for people. And what happened, I think, in 2016 especially, was we had this country that had experienced tremendous difficulty after 2008. There was this growing wealth gap that was caused in large part by corruption that went totally unpunished during the Obama years. And Donald Trump got up there and said, look, I come from this world. I'm one of these people who lives up on that corrupt Olympus, and I know how things work, and they're lying to you and they're lying about me. And rather than address that directly, they just kept talking about him, being, this or that, and highlighting his negatives instead of addressing the issues, which is what they've never done. They've never understood that they have to reckon with their own unpopularity before they can get rid of the guy.
Watch entire episodes on demand for free at rumble.com/Russell Brand.